Hey, I'm Brian with Next Level Gardening, and today I'm going to show you how I plant potted roses and bare root roses. And today it's actually raining. Well, actually this whole week coming up is going to be raining. But I was able to get outside right before the rains started a couple days ago and plant my roses in the new cottage garden behind me. Now the garden and the cottage are not even finished yet, but that's not going to stop us from planting. Right now is the time for a lot of places to plant bare root roses. Anytime from November to April, depending on your climate, but right about January, February, as long as your ground is not frozen and you can work it, and it's also not a wet, sloppy swamp, you can put your roses in the ground. Let me know in the comments if you grow roses and what your favorites are. So far, I've planted 3 climbing roses called Perfume Breeze that I got on clearance at Lowe's several months ago. They were potted roses, and those are going to climb up and over the chicken run. And I also planted 5 bare root English shrub roses from David Austin. Now, I've wanted to grow David Austin roses for a long time, but never had enough sun at my old house. But now I've got all that space out there with tons of sun. So I ordered 5, and then I ordered 2 more that just arrived today. So they're going to go in the ground once the rain stops. Now the varieties I got from David Austin are Olivia Rose Austin, Gertrude Jekyll, Vanessa Bell, the Alnwick Rose, Anne Boleyn, and Windermere. Those are the shrub roses. And then I realized I wanted to have another climbing rose to grow up and over the front door of the cottage. And that one is called Wallerton Old Hall. It's a climbing rose again. Now I can't wait till these all get established and just fill this garden behind me with color and scent. Make sure you're subscribed and I'll take you through the year and do videos on rose pruning, fertilizing, how to train them to produce maximum color. And there's also companion plantings that help ward off black spot and mildew, which take a lot of roses out. So if you can plant plants around them that help take care of that, all the better. So stick with me. So let's talk bare root first. Now I'm actually glad this arrived just an hour ago before shooting this video because I can show you the different parts of the rose up close. Bare root means that they dig it up out of the field when the rose becomes dormant in the winter, and they send it to you with bare roots. Now sometimes they're packed in wood shavings, sometimes they're just in a plastic bag and there's moisture in there. Now there's a couple things you want to know about bare root. First of all, when you get them, you want to inspect them for any broken roots that might have happened during digging, during transport, and just clip those off. It doesn't need those broken roots. They're not going to help the plant at all. Also, you want to know about the graft union. Now most roses are grafted, and that means they take a really strong rootstock and they graft the variety of rose you want onto that. So it gives you a vigorous plant from the rootstock, but also the variety that you want that may not have the best roots in the beginning. And that graft union or graft point is this bulge. You got the roots, and then the trunk coming up, and then you've got a bulge, and that's the graft union. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we're actually planting it, but you need to know what that is before we get there. And then you've got the plant, the branches up above. Roses are fairly easy plants to grow. They're not easy to kill. That being said, there are things you need to do to have it thrive. I grew roses for several years in spots that were too shady and they didn't get enough water, and so they didn't die ever, but they sat there, didn't bloom a lot, got diseased, and just kind of limped their way through every single season. You don't want that. So you want to choose a spot in full sun, meaning at least 6 hours of direct sun every day. They will take just about any soil. If it's super sandy soil, they're going to need a lot of organic matter to bulk up the nutrients and the water absorbent, the water holding power of the soil. But other than that, they'll grow in just almost anywhere. As far as soil is concerned at planting time, I don't add any compost or amendments unless I have really sandy soil. And I said this in the bare root fruit tree video that I did a couple weeks ago, and I got some questions as to why. And there's a few reasons. Roots have a hard time with texture changes. If you make the hole you plant in very light and full of compost and fertilizer, the roots will start growing in that, and basically they get spoiled. And when they try to travel outside that zone and they hit soil that's not so nice, they're going to be like, whoa, I don't want to go out there. I'm just going to circle back and stay in this comfy little area. You don't want that. You want the rose to send their roots out as far and wide as possible. And so that's why I don't amend the soil. If your soil is a heavy clay, you can mix in a cup of gypsum into the bottom and into the backfill that you're going to put back in the hole, and that can help break up some of that clay. Now, I will be mulching with good compost or well-rotted manure on top of the ground, and that will be pulled into the ground by the worms. But by that time, the roots they're going to already have started to work their way out. And I will be fertilizing with Neptune's Harvest rose and flowering formula throughout the season. So let's get started with planting the bare root rose, and then we'll get to the potted roses in a couple of minutes. So the first thing you're going to do is you want to fill a bucket with water and put your roses, your bare root roses, in there, roots down, for about 2 hours. So while you're working with all the holes, getting the holes ready, digging the holes, let them sit in there, and that's going to help them rehydrate, because you don't know how long they've been sitting on the store shelf or coming through the mail. So you want to make sure they're nice and hydrated before you plant them in the ground. Dig a hole that's about 1.5 feet wide and about between 9 and 12 inches deep. And we want to plant the rose at a certain level. So you can place a stick across the hole, so you're going to be able to see the soil level all the way across the hole, like a little bridge. And there's varying advice on how deep to bury a bare root rose. I've even seen conflicting advice from David Austin themselves, right on their own website. So some people say to bury the rose with the graft union, that's this part right here, this bulge, buried deep. So, maybe up to there. So the stems would be under the ground, and that prevents root rock in the wind. And so it keeps the roots from being disturbed by the wind. Some say to bury the graft at soil level. And some say 2 to 3 inches above soil level, stating that you don't want this top section putting down roots, because eventually they'll take over and you won't have the good root stock. You'll just have a bunch of growth from this new part that doesn't have as good a root quality. I think if you have clay soil, bury it high for drainage purposes. I'm going to split the difference and bury it just up to under the graft union. And then I'm going to mound some mulch up around it. Now, once you have the hole dug, in the bottom of the hole, you want to make a cone of soil that matches the roots. You can see the roots are growing in a conal shape, right? From in the center here, they go out in all directions. So there's a cone shape here in the middle. So what you want to do is make a cone that kind of allows you to set this rootstock down on top of that cone and have the roots be able to kind of lay right on top of that cone in the bottom of the hole. Now, it might take you a few times measuring with the stick until you get it at the right level. You might have to make your cone a little taller, maybe fill in the hole a little bit, dig out a little bit. But once you've got it at the right level, it's sitting on top of the cone, then start to fill in the soil around the roots. Backfill the soil slowly, pushing the soil in with your fingers, getting it in there between all of the roots, filling in all the air pockets, and firming it lightly all the way around as you go with your hands. Make a watering basin and water it, fill it up completely. In fast draining soils, you want to water every day for the first 3 days, and then twice a week for the next 3 weeks. In heavy soils, check the moisture twice a week and water when necessary. Now, ongoing, you want to water deeply to saturate the root system twice a week. You want these roots to be searching, you don't want them to search for water just right around there, because the soil at the top of the ground dries out much faster than the soil deeper. And therefore, you're going to have to water more frequently, because that's where the roots are going to be. They're going to be right there on top of the soil. The sun comes out, heats up the soil, evaporates the water, and all of a sudden it's out of moisture. But if you water deeply, penetrate the ground, then those roots are going to grow down deep to find that water. And then when the top 4 or 6 inches of soil dries out in the summertime, it's not going to make a difference because there are going to be plenty of roots down deeper where the soil stays moist. The last thing to do is cut all of the branches back to within 8 inches of the soil. Now, David Austin already did that for me, so I didn't have to do that step. But if you get it from somewhere else and the branches are longer than 8 inches, chop them all off to 8 inches above the soil. So that's it for bare root. It couldn't be any more simple. Now we go to the potted roses. These are the 3 potted climbing roses I got at Lowe's. The variety is Perfume Breeze. And I want to grow them up and over the chicken run to give the cottage some color and height, and to give the chickens a bit of shade in the summer. And as the rose petals fall into the chicken run, they are edible, and so the chickens can have a nutritious snack and provide some of the cleanup. You can plant potted roses at any time of the year, again, as long as the ground isn't frozen or super wet. And it's very similar to planting the bare root roses, except of course you don't need the cone in the bottom. Just dig a hole slightly larger than the pot, remove the plant from the pot, see if it's root bound. If there's a lot of roots around the outside, you can kind of scratch them and break them up a little bit. And then I took some of the mycorrhizal fungi and kind of just rubbed it around on the roots, let the excess fall into the hole. And then bury it with the crown at soil level, even if that's different from the level it was growing in the pot. And the crown is right the top part of the graft union where all the branches start to grow out. Backfill, kind of pushing in all the free areas with your fingers. Create a watering basin and keep the soil moist. Like I said, throughout the rest of the year, I'm going to take you along. Every time there's time to do something with roses, I will make a video on it. I'll also give you updates on the cottage garden and the roses that will be a big part of the cottage garden, along with dahlias and all of the other perennials that I have planned. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, share it with a gardening friend, and I'll see you next time.